So this weekend was kind of awesome. The two reenactment groups that I'm with, got together and had a big fight at the Fergus Highland Games and Scottish Festival. So that was a lot of fun. And I got another really cool thing. My friend, who I've mentioned before, and who actually made the waster that we gave away, that Torvik gave away for the tumbler giveaway a while back, that I made the frog for. He actually made me a waster to my specifications, and everything. So, and then I traded him a wicked awesome hood that was made in the Skildum style and everything. And it was it's super large that he can pull it down over his face and basically take a nap. It's like a sleeping bag for his head. It's kind of awesome. So he made me an equally awesome waster, and when he handed it to me, he said he said give me a fair review of it so I can level up my skills. So that's exactly what I'm doing, and I'm also going to post the info for his Etsy store down below, where he actually sells these for a pretty decent price for what you get. So I will get started. So here's the sword. This is actually just a cardboard one that he made for my girlfriend. He made two and three of these last year for my girlfriend and I when we went to Fan Expo. Because at Fan Expo you can't actually bring in any metal weapons or anything. So he did these. And this is kind of talking about or speaks to his past in creating things. And the one medium that he absolutely loves is cardboard. And so he made these really awesome cardboard swords. The makerspace that he goes to has a laser cutter. And so he's able to cut out all the parts in the laser and make these awesome things. And I think this is the only one to survive fully intact. One of them got totally destroyed at Fan Expo. And the other one, I think, just broke down by the hilt and just didn't survive. And this one lives on. So this kind of is, I guess, sort of the evolution of the ideas. I know he made a couple of wooden ones before this one, this cardboard one, but he's made tons of cardboard weapons, and they're all just mind-bogglingly awesome. And so then, the next waster is this one. I think you guys saw me make, I think I've used it a couple times in videos though. And this one, it sort of goes through the levels of his work, and this one is one that he tried really hard to do some details on. I guess a little bit before he fully worked out the process, and this thing is beautiful. It performs really well, and it's actually, I think, one of the best performing ones he's made to date. And its balance point is right about there, I guess, which makes it so that it's easy to get this thing on point and recover from overstrikes and everything. And it performs like a sword should. It's a lot lighter because the wood isn't exactly the most dense, but it performs really well. My only criticism of this one was that the size of the grip was too big, too bulky. I have fairly large hands, and and the length of the grip was too long. It's my hand is about there in 8 centimeters, and sort of what the average Viking sword grip would be is around about here, maybe even actually compressing my hand a little bit. And so it's quite a bit bigger. But it's based off of your typical reenactment sword length of grip. So I can see where he got the length from. But then the other thing is, because the length of the grip and the size of the grip is so big, he had to put bulkier fittings on it. And partially I think that was also to do with the fear that these would break if they were any smaller. I can't really speak for his mindset there. But this is a beautiful sword nonetheless, and it still performs very, very well. Just the bulk of the grip section was the one thing that I wasn't as impressed with. But again, it performs very well. It serves its purpose, and it's still a very beautiful thing. So then now comes the beauty that he's made recently. This is one of two that he finished recently. I wish I could have gotten pictures of the other one. Beautifully smooth carved tri-lobe pommel on that one, and it surprised me that it came out that perfect. And that was a beautiful one, and it's again a blade similar to this. You know, your typical double-edged, your quintessential Viking sword. This one is sort of in a late period thing, sort of like the Ulfbert ones, where it was going from more of a slashing spada type blade into more of a pointy arming sword type blade. So yeah, so that's just a comment on that, but it's totally valid because the hilt configuration of this one is late period anyway. So it's that one. It has a similar blade to this, but just the detail he was able to achieve in those fittings, Einar has completely leveled up his skills. And so with this one, I wanted a single-edged sword, partially because I like techniques that are used, obviously, like 300 years later, with Messer, and in between with falchions and stuff like that. So the single-edged sort of appeals to me that way, and I do like fighting with a long sax. So with a single-edged sword, it is just an evolution of a long sax, so it's a sword-length sax with sword fittings. And I've always liked the look of the Albion Berserker. It's just a beautiful blade, and I like the idea of the way that it performs. It's not going to balance the way that a double-edged sword will, because it's not for that same purpose. With a double-edged sword, even if it has a wide tip like a spada, you're still going to be able to do a certain amount of thrusting with it. Not necessarily on armor and breaking the armor or anything like that, but or busting the chain, but you're able to thrust with it on unarmored things because it will still cut flesh. You might be able to get between gaps and ribs a little bit, and so any little cut that you do to somebody will break their focus a little bit because it will cause pain. With a single-edged sword, because of the way that the tip is, you're not really going to be thrusting with it so much, so it is a predominantly slashing, cleaving weapon. And the way they do perform closer to a falchion than an arming sword. So, it's kind of like an early falchion. More balanced. So it's more, I guess it's more along the same lines as a Messer, but 300 years before. So what he ended up making me was this single-edged sword. It is sort of along the lines of a Peterson Type B, and it has a Peterson Type C hilt, and it is pretty awesome. I like the way that it performs. It actually balances, I guess, fairly close to center, just a little bit behind center. So it's not utterly blade heavy like an axe, but it's also not, excuse me, as well balanced as a sword. It's, I guess, about 8 inches from the hilt, 8 or 9 inches from the hilt. So that it performs like it should. It's a cleaving weapon. It's not going to respond as quickly as something like this one. But it's also not designed for the same thing. He also has this ability to capture the essence of the person and the fighting style of the person in the object that they're making, or that he's making. So if he talks to the person that he's making it for and says, okay, what kind of fighting style do you have, or he sees them fight, he'll be able to sort of tailor it to what they do. And he knows that I like to break shields. Yeah. So he knows that I do this type of thing. He knows that I don't necessarily need something that's quite as nimble. So this kind of blade is perfect. And it's also sort of the description that Albion has, that it's called the Berserker because it's a shield splitter. So there's that. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start with the blade. The blade profile this way is beautiful. And I like how chunky this is. The edge is on it, so that when you contact something, it's not like you're hitting a very small edge or a very rounded edge that will cause it to break or anything. There's no real focal point because he's smoothed off the corners. It's not as likely to chip or break that way, and it's still a very wide surface, so that it is able to absorb some of the impacts. The fuller in here is fairly smooth. There are a number of little jumps where the router shifted a little bit, and I actually think that once he gets his jig fully set up for doing the fullers, it'll be a lot easier for him to get them nice and smooth, and even consistency and everything. Certainly a lot more than doing it freehand, and a lot more than doing it with sort of a makeshift fence or jig. But that just takes a little bit of time. And it's shallow enough that it doesn't really affect the strength, the integral strength of it in any way. It doesn't really make it, it's shallow enough that it doesn't make it any weaker. It's not too much material removed, but it's deep enough that it actually does affect the balance characteristics and the performance characteristics of it, as well as it does feel like it creates enough of an I-beam effect that it keeps it strong in this plane, which is what it should be, because when you're hitting things, it should be stronger in this plane than necessarily this plane. So it does feel like it's doing what it's supposed to. And then the funny thing is, when you're holding it this way, it kind of, and looking down on this thing when you're holding it, it kind of feels like, or it kind of looks like to your brain that you're just holding a piece of 1x3 with a handle. But I can assure you, it does not perform that way. It feels a lot better, and just knowing that you have this bulky piece makes you feel a little more secure in the idea that it's not going to break on you. So, yeah. The only other thing about the blade that I noticed is the grain is a little wavy in parts, which for the light contact and drilling and stuff like that, it's not going to make any difference. But if this gets any kind of heavy contact, or heavier than intended contact, that's where it's going to break. There's a number of spots where the grain goes off, and that's where it's going to break when it eventually does, if it does. So that's one thing to watch out for. Try to get wood that's nice and straight. Now for the hilt components, I just want to try to get a close-up of this so you guys can actually see how crisp he got the pommel and the guard. Solidly crisp lines. It's intense. And from swinging, I'm beyond words on how crisp some of this is. The one thing that I would have done a little bit differently is in here, along these edges, when you're holding it and actually using the proper technique where you allow the pommel to slide past your hand. Sometimes, if you're not wearing gauntlets, this actually can sort of bite into your hand a little bit. So I would have just taken that edge off just a little bit. Still kept it crisp, but broke the arris so that it isn't a solidly sharp corner. It actually has a very, very, very slight chamfer to it on those surfaces. And that will also limit that if in the freak event that this part receives an impact, it's not going to chip as easily. if you break the arrows. Just one little note, and it's such a minor thing. For the length of the grip, I told him to try and do the 8 centimeter grip, and I measured it, and it was about 9.5. And I was like, okay, you know, that leaves a little bit extra gap, like I could slide a finger in there, which I was just like, oh, okay. But then I tried it with my gauntlets, and with my with the leather of my gauntlet, the way that it is, it's actually a perfect fit. So I'm not worried at all. It actually worked out better this way. So, and it's not like some of the other things, like this sword here, which, you know, it should be more like this, but even with my gauntlet, I could fit, you know, like 2 fingers in there, and so this one is actually almost a hand and a half sword with, or hand and a half with a arming sword length blade on it. So it's, or not even an arming sword length blade. So it's, you know, so this is actually perfect in that regard. So for the grip, there's a couple of things, like the leather wasn't quite glued on perfectly. That is something that I know he's been practicing and working on. Instead of using, well, what he did is he wrapped the grip inside with waxed cotton, sort of the fake sinew, to give something that the epoxy would have a mechanical bond on, as well as giving an interesting, a good grippy feeling of the cord wrap underneath, and a bit of give to it, so that you're not just gripping on wood. I like the size of the grip, so that's pretty good. It's just this leather that is peeling off a little in spots. And come to think of it, I do have a resource for a tutorial on how to do the leather, that I know if you end up seeing this, I'll send you that. And it's good. I personally wouldn't use epoxy to do the grip. I would use contact cement, so putting contact cement on the grip surface and then putting some on the leather, and then laying the first edge along, wrapping it, or applying pressure to that so it sets, wrapping it around, then doing the cord wrap around it, and then when you're done, you can actually peel this back just till you see the other edge of the leather, and then use a razor to cut along that edge very carefully, and then you can press it all in, and then it should be a fairly secure layered piece. But what I'm going to do anyway, because I like to add a bit of extra grip and everything to it, is I'm going to wrap it in strips of deer hide anyway, to give it a bit of extra grip, as well as changing the look around a little bit. Change the look and grip, and it also adds just a little bit of bulk to it, and rounds out those corners just a little bit more. Did a very good job of making a fairly round handle. I know that's hard when it's constructed the way that it is. And so just a note on the construction, these are actually made in the way that you would pretty much make a real sword. It's only 3 pieces. There's not a handle section, a blade section, a guard and pommel. They're not carved out of one piece or anything like that. It's actually 3 sections. So what he's done is he's cut the blade, basically cut a tang, and it's the size of, basically I think this time he did it as small as he could without affecting the strength of it. So he cut it into a square section, and cut a hole, a mortise through this the guard piece, slid it on, glued it on, carved a mortise into the pommel block, glued that on, and then wrapped the grip. So it is essentially created the same way a regular sword is created. So yeah, I am very happy with this piece. I can't wait to actually use it. I swung it around quite a few times, just to get a feel for it and everything. I would definitely say that as they are right now, they are definitely worth the money. They're definitely worth the money right now with what they are. You get a very, very nice product, and it's handmade. And then eventually, I believe he will be looking at getting different types of woods, which will not only affect the look of it, because you get a blade in one color, one type of wood, and the guard and everything, and the hilt components in another type. So he's eventually going to have options. Right now he's using ash that he has on hand to make them so that as he's leveling up his skills, it's still an affordable product. And so it's a handmade thing. And if you talk to him, you can maybe get something with the type of hilt that you like, with different things. And so I'd say they're totally worth the money, the way they are. And with each one made, his skills get better and better and better because he's constantly learning from what he does. He doesn't just go, oh yeah, they're good enough. He actually learns properly what to do next time, and he takes pride in making something better and better and better. So I will include his current contact info and stuff down below. Hopefully, eventually, I can get these into my store, Sons of Vivaldi, when that's up and running and everything. And we can go from there too, so that'd be good. So, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. If you're interested in these, do not hesitate to contact Einar. You guys could strike a deal. These are excellent for drilling, both solo drills and light contact ones. If you don't mind the price tag for something that you're going to use for heavier contact, that's great. But personally, I think I would keep this at a light contact and solo drilling things. Only because it is a beautiful art piece, a functional art piece. So, yeah. Thanks again. See you next time.